Hey scrap bosses, welcome back. Today I have a product review and a scrapbook process video featuring Arteza acrylic colors. These are beautiful acrylic paints. I was sent actually a few products from Arteza to try out, but today in this process video, I'm going to use these fantastic paints and a stencil to create a painted stenciled background on my layout. Let me show you some of the things that Arteza sent me. First up, they sent me a set of 4 bone folders, and I'm going to come back to this in a separate video. I love tools like this, particularly high quality tools that I can use for a variety of projects, so I'll come back to that later. I was also sent some of their holographic chunky glitter, and this is absolutely beautiful. So it comes in these small little containers. This first one is called Electra. So pretty. The next one is called Mermaid Rain, and I do plan on using these in another video, so stay tuned for that. This one's called Fairy Dust, which is pretty. And then the last one is called Moonstone. And I already have a project in mind for these glitters, so make sure you stay tuned for that to come. So in this video, I'm going to be using the Arteza 60 count acrylic colors. In fact, I'm going to use 3 of these colors for my project today. This pack has a gorgeous set of 60 acrylic paints, ranging in gorgeous colors. You can use these acrylic paints for a lot of projects, and sometimes people get tripped up when they buy acrylic paints and they're scrapbookers and are not quite sure how to use it. So I'm going to give you a very simple way for you to use your acrylic paints. I'm trying to show you that paint color, but I think that the lighting is just a little bit too bright, but we'll come back to that. So this is what the box looks like. Also, they sent me 2 craft color scrapbooks. Now these are going to look very reminiscent of older scrapbooks that people used to use back in the day, where you would just pop your photos in. It has a really nice binding system and a gorgeous ribbon that you can just untie to open up the album, and inside are black pages. Now these are cardstock pages. They're not terribly thick, but they're okay for photos, and I'm kind of thinking that I want to do some mixed media work in these albums along with adding some photos. I'm not quite sure how I want to use this yet, but I will definitely be featuring this in another video. But I liked it because it reminded me of just old albums or older scrapbooks where people would just put their photos and add some journaling. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on the project. I pulled out 3 colors for this project. The first one is a yellow color. The other one is a yellow or an orange yellow, and this one is cerulean blue. I also picked up some Heidi Swapp black color shine, which I'm probably not going to use. I have this little sponge. You can just grab that at your craft and hobby store. And this Deco Art Americana decor stencil, this is typically used to paint on, say, furniture, that type of thing. I'm going to use it for a paper crafting project because, you know, for me, stencils are stencils. I'm also going to be painting some wood veneer letters that are going to spell sweet on my title. And then I pulled a whole bunch of stuff from my stash. So apart from the paint, everything is from my stash. From the embellishments to the die cuts as well as the pattern paper. I'm trying really hard to use what I have already available to me and get all those things used up so I can justify buying more stuff. So you're going to see me use some of these elements on this scrapbook page, and they're all from various manufacturers, and I coordinated the colors to go with the pattern paper and the paints that I'm going to use to create my background. So here are the pattern papers, some from Pink Fresh Studio, some from Maggie Holmes. I also have some thick white cardstock. Here are my photos cut down to 4x6 or printed at 4x6. I'm actually going to trim them down to roughly 4x4 to fit behind a frame rather. I'm going to do that here in a second. So let's go ahead and put those paints into action. I have a media mat that I'm just going to tape to my table so it doesn't move. I'm going to do that with some washi tape. What I want to achieve here is a very colorful textured background using these gorgeous acrylic paints. So I'm going to go ahead and position my stencil on my mat. I'm going to hold it in place with a little bit of washi tape. Then I'm going to go ahead and create a palette of these acrylic paints here on my media mat. And if you're not familiar with a media mat, I think this is a Ranger media mat, but you can wipe it up very easily with any media that you use on there. You want to protect your surface. Now I'm coming in with my sponge, and notice how I'm just dabbing that paint on. And what it does is that sponge has a bit of texture to it, and it's going to give this full design a gorgeous texture. Now you can apply this with a cosmetic sponge if you want to. You can apply it with a paintbrush. You can apply this paint with a paint palette. I chose to apply it with a sponge because I wanted a nice grainy texture, and you can see that coming on. And notice that I'm mixing those colors, and the finished product, I have this gorgeous stencil design using this acrylic paint. Now, I did not need to gesso my paper because I'm not using a lot of water or any water on this. In fact, I'm using a very little bit of that acrylic paint because it is so pigmented. It is a very nice smooth paint. You don't need a whole lot for this technique. So I'm just adding a little bit on, and I'm mixing in those colors because I want them to blend. And when you do that, it provides another look for your design. You get even more colors when you're able to blend complementary colors together. I'm doing this very casually, moving the stencil around where I want it on my design. So I have two of the design at the top and the bottom, and then of course I went ahead and stenciled in the middle. And look at all that beautiful, colorful texture using those paints and that sponge. It's really that simple. You don't need a whole lot to create a beautiful mixed media background. You can go a long way with paints and a sponge. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a dipped effect using these Arteza paints. Again, using the same colors I did with my sponge. Now I could go in and use my sponge and that would give it a really nice texture, but I wanted more of a smooth paint effect on my wood veneer. So I'm going to get them lined up. Then I'm going to tape off the top because again, I'm going for a dipped effect and I want the paint to appear at the bottom of these letters. I could certainly have covered the bottom part of the letters and painted the top. This is something that I do quite often to give a little bit more of a personalized feel to my wood veneer pieces. So I'm alternating the colors a little bit. I also had a little bit of extra paint that spilled on that W, so I'm just scraping that off because it is a wood veneer. I'm able to scrape that off and rescue it. So I'm going to set that to the side to dry. Those paints dry very, very fast. In fact, you don't even need a heat tool. The more paint you use, the longer it's going to take to dry. Now I'm going to frame out my photos, and these are just some frames that I had sitting around in my stash. They're kind of like a Polaroid photo frame, which is really fun. And what I'm doing is I'm centering in on the focal point of each photo. So these are photos of my daughter, and it was early in the morning. I was getting up to work out, and I found her in the living room asleep. And she was very, very tired because she had been staying up very late. She has a hard time falling asleep at night. But I love taking pictures of her when she's sleeping because she looks so precious. So I decided to document that. And I've documented this a few times as she's aged over the years. So what I did was I took some fun foam, back the photos with the fun foam, and I kind of make a slight mistake. So I'll come back to those photos here in a second. I position them on the layout. I also bring over my part of my title, and I decided, you know what, if I laid it flat against the layout, it wouldn't pop as much. So I went ahead and popped those up using some foam squares. And now it gives it that added dimension because of that color in the background. And I'm using the same colors on the words. It really makes it pop. It's really noticeable when you see it up close. Not so much, well, it is slightly here in the video, but more so when you see it in person. All right, so at this point I forget that I had pattern paper that I wanted to use to layer behind my photos. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pattern paper. I'm just going to trim it up. Nothing super formal. I just want a little bit of pop of color behind those photos. And because I already have the foam on there, I just went ahead and backed the photo in the foam with that pattern paper, and I'm just going to make the adjustment and make it work. I've done this multiple times where I've forgotten about the pattern paper that I want to layer with, and I put a whole bunch of foam adhesive on my photo. It's okay. I still get that added texture and that added dimension. Once I got that settled, I'm trying to figure out the second part of my title, which is the word face. So the title reads Sweet Face. I found some font stickers in my stash from Felicity Jane, and I went ahead and added that on there. I wanted a black and white element because my photos are black and white, and there are some of the elements that I'm using from a Maggie Home sticker sheet that you see there that also have a little bit of black. Some of those elements will stay and some of them will go. So I have a little house that I want to put to the left-hand side of the word sweet, and this little, I guess it's a panda bear girl at the top. She's actually going to go away. And then I have this little cloud because, you know, why not? She's sleeping. Because I have so much going on in the background, I wanted to keep the embellishing simple. So whenever you're doing a multicolored background, don't feel like you have to embellish a whole lot. In fact, just a small bit of embellishing goes a long way depending on the layout design. I also bring out these wood veneer pieces by Pink Fresh Studio, and I'm going to add those to each point, each cluster of the layout. So they're at the top right, to the bottom left, and then to the bottom right. I'm also looking at some Maggie Holmes stickers, and in the back there are some heart stickers that I wanted to add in. Again, smaller scale embellishments, still adding some interest to the layout, but not overwhelming. So at first, I thought I was going to use some black hearts. That's the first row of hearts that are on the sticker sheet. But I decided that that was just not standing out as much as I wanted it to. It just sort of faded back, wasn't really popping. So then I decided I was going to use some stars. So here I am peeling up the hearts, which of course rip because that's my life. I always do this. I stick things down and pull them up and rip them, and I just never learn. So I'm going to go ahead and put stars, and this time I put a little red star to the bottom left, a blue star to the bottom right, and then I'm going to put a light color blue star there on top of the heart. Now I'm going to add in some enamel dots. I've got some from Pink Fresh Studio, and from Freckled Fawn, and then I believe Echo Park. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle those on each cluster, again keeping them small scale because I've got so much color going on in the background of the layout. And I just don't need a whole lot. Plus, I really like the background. I love the texture. I love the paint. These colors are so gorgeous and vibrant. I think this is some of the best acrylic paint that I've used in quite a while. I love Arteza products. They're fantastic, and their paints are really great as well. So I added a sticker from a Maggie Holmes sticker sheet that says Dreaming. And at first I thought I'd put it on the photo frame, but then I'm up here shopping it around. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to put this thing. So I just put it at the top because I wanted just a little bit of black to go at the top of the layout in some way. So I thought that would work. Next up, I felt the layout needed some grounding because the background is so white. There's lots of white space, and normally I'm okay with that. But in this one, I needed something else. I needed something that's going to hold in that design. So I reached for a piece of pattern paper that I had pulled originally, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to do some border strips, and that worked out perfectly. Adding some double-sided adhesive to the strips, I cut them about 1/8 of an inch, or a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch, I should say. And I'm going to go ahead and frame the two sides of the layout. And I think that holds everything in together. It marries the entire layout, and it doesn't look like it's about to fall off. Using my typecast typewriter, I typed up some journaling for this layout. Very simple journaling, sweet face, little feet, sleeping on the couch. And she looked like a little baby with a little baby face. Even though she's getting bigger, there are moments where she does still look like my little baby Corinne. Now I'm searching for a roller date stamp out of the many that I have in my collection and trying to, of course, work out the date. I don't use roller date stamps very well. They confuse me, but I get that on there. So here we have the completed layout featuring those Arteza acrylic paints and a stencil. How simple is this technique to create something unique? You can also create a bunch of backgrounds using stencils and these acrylic paints and then have them ready to go for any project, whether it's a scrapbook, layout background, traveler's notebook, your planner, a mixed media project. These paints are fantastic. I highly recommend that you check them out. To see still photos of this project, make sure you head on over to the Victoria Marie blog, and to learn more about this product, I posted some links down below to the Arteza website. If you are new to mixed media or want to try acrylic paints, then I think this is the set for you. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to the Victoria Marie YouTube channel. When you do, click that bell indicator. That way you'll know each and every time a new video is posted.